Let's get the important thing out of the way first. Did Elvis actually deep throat a mic in Vegas? Yes, thank you for watching. You can close the video now.
Lord have mercy.
Okay, but for real, thanks for sticking around. Now, every generation has had a chance to discover past icons for themselves, and it seems like the last year or so has been a moment for a younger generation to rediscover Elvis Presley. Between Baz Luhrmann's 2022 blockbuster, Elvis, and 2023's seeming award season contender, Priscilla, we've got two high-profile films about Elvis, and this is in addition to some other well-received stuff like the sorta recent documentary, Elvis Presley the Searcher, and the death of Lisa Marie Presley, further bringing attention to the Presley legacy.
Seeing as we made previous videos about Elvis and we loved Baz Luhrmann's film even though it was an absolute fever dream, we wanted to fact check these two recent movies, Elvis and Priscilla, as well as a recent TV show, Agent Elvis on Netflix, to see how well they represent a story that at this point has been told a dozen times. We thought this video would be interesting, especially since both films seem to have entirely different goals. We're not going to cover literally every inch or plot point in these movies because that would make this video 5 hours long. So we're examining the bigger plot points and stuff that we found interesting. And we want to examine the way that these moments are dramatized. In preparation, we revisited some of Elvis's biographies we'd read before, and we both read through Priscilla Presley's memoir, Elvis and Me. What we found surprised us. Let's tackle Elvis first.
If you watch Baz Luhrmann's Elvis for more than like 3.5 seconds, you can tell that he's not at all trying to recreate reality on a one-to-one basis. That's never what Baz Luhrmann does. Instead, it feels to us like he's trying to convey how Elvis's life felt. It's an absolute whirlwind of montage and dance and propulsive editing and lights, and it's a lot. During the opening, we found ourselves asking, when does the actual movie start? And it turned out that was just how it was going to be. Once we gave ourselves over to the craziness, we really settled into it. It's a good movie. We like it.
Since Baz is clearly not shooting for accuracy, we want to be clear that this is nothing like a gotcha essay. We want to compare where Elvis's documented life aligns or differs from the story that the writers, directors, and actors were trying to create. Just because it may diverge from sources doesn't mean it's a ding against the movie. It's just a choice that the film makes. Let's start at the beginning.
Colonel Tom Parker received as much as 50% of Elvis's income. As best we can tell, this is true, though maybe not for all portions of Elvis's career. Parker always looked to sweeten the deal, even after the papers were signed.
Colonel Parker got his start in carnivals before moving to music promotion, including Hank Snow and Jimmie Rodgers. This is true. Hank Snow is here, played by David Wenham, and his son Jimmie Rodgers is played by Cody Smith McPhee. The Colonel was managing them as jamboree attractions when he came across Elvis.
The Colonel first met Elvis backstage at the Louisiana Hayride. False. The Colonel met Elvis at Memphis's Ellis Auditorium on February 6, 1955, not at the Louisiana Hayride in Shreveport. The film collapses this into a shorter period. The Colonel had actually seen Elvis perform for the first time in October 1954 and was introduced to Elvis by his then-current manager, Bob Neal. Songwriter and friend of Elvis, Mae Axton, remembered, and I don't mean it derogatorily, the Colonel got dollar marks in his eyes.
The film shows Jimmie Rodgers being pretty smitten with Elvis. True. Jimmie Rodgers did express admiration for Elvis, thinking he was really cool and very stylish. Although the film seems to suggest that Rodgers had a bit of a crush on Elvis, there isn't really any evidence for that. He did spend a lot of the rest of his life preaching against rock and roll, however.
The film shows Gladys and Vernon reluctant to sign Elvis with the Colonel. False. We couldn't find anything to support this. Elvis's parents were the ones who actually signed the contract because Elvis signed when he was still a minor. The Colonel's official capacity at that time was as special advisor to Elvis Presley, the artist, and Bob Neal, the manager, for $2,500 a year. Elvis had already been signed to an agent and a recording contract, but the film seems to portray this like it's his first contract, probably just for dramatic effect.
The film says that Elvis reluctantly broke up with his girlfriend at the Colonel's behest. False. Actually, Elvis had definitely cheated on her while on the road, and they both just kind of knew how things would go. He knew that she knew, and he says that she forgave him. She actually even said that if Elvis ever came back to her, she'd divorce whoever she was with and be with Elvis again. Her name was Anita Wood. She died in June of this year.
Elvis buys Graceland in the late 50s. Sort of true. The film shows Elvis buying Graceland a little earlier than he actually did, sometime around 1956, before he's appeared on the Milton Berle show. In actuality, he bought it in mid-1957. The whole film is a little shaky on the order of events, beginning in 1957 and 1958, but it's a pretty small shuffle.
Elvis's early TV appearances were censored, and Elvis was conflicted about it. True, he didn't like what newspapers said about him, hated the Elvis the Pelvis moniker, and was pressured to put on a new Elvis Presley act for TV. He did have to sing Hound Dog to a dog and was terribly embarrassed. After his TV appearances, just as the movie depicts, fans really did ask for the real Elvis back.
Elvis and B.B. King were friends. Sort of true. The film makes it look like Elvis and B.B. were lifelong friends, which they weren't, but they were friendly. The actuality is probably a little closer, somewhere between casual acquaintances and casual friends. It doesn't seem like Elvis ever knew Sister Rosetta Tharpe or Little Richard personally, though the film shows them all together. Elvis and B.B. definitely didn't chill in juke joints on Beale Street, though.
Elvis received pressure from management and outside influences to tone down his act, which he refused to do. That's sort of true. This was one of our favorite moments in the movie. The film shows Elvis going all out at a baseball field show in Memphis, openly defying the police vice squad. That show happened, and Elvis's all-black suit and Red Sox is totally accurate, but the finger-wiggling thing seen in the movie came from a television appearance on a different night and not at that performance. He did announce to the crowd that he was not going to be changed none. He didn't open with Trouble, unfortunately. It was Heartbreak Hotel. Elvis actually wouldn't perform Trouble for 2 more years. Now, despite what Elvis said on stage, the show was a little bit toned down, but most people apparently didn't mind because he'd grown as a performer so much and he was able to entice the crowd in other ways. Unlike the movie shows where he gets forcibly removed from the stage in the middle of the first songs, he played a whole set.
Elvis's mom dies right before he is deployed to Germany. True, Elvis received his draft card and was at Fort Hood in training when his mother's health became an emergency. There's even a shot of Elvis and Vernon crying together on the steps of Graceland that is meticulously recreated for the film.
In 1959 in Germany, Elvis meets Priscilla, and it's portrayed as pretty romantic. False. Priscilla was in the 9th grade. Elvis was 24. It's fucked up.
The next sequence involves Elvis's life becoming a Hollywood movie and introducing the Memphis Mafia while showing a bunch of his films. Nightlife totally slaps. The surprising thing about this sequence is that it's essentially summarizing or skipping over 1960 to 1968 altogether. We really like how it shows the endless possibilities of Elvis's Hollywood career quickly devolving into garbage that Elvis hated, which he would frequently cite to Priscilla over the phone when he was filming.
Elvis met Steve Binder and his partner Bones in Hollywood for the '68 comeback special. Sort of true. They, of course, didn't meet at the dilapidated Hollywood sign, but an office is just way less visually interesting or thematically appropriate for the movie. Binder was actually not a fan of Elvis, despite his line saying so in the film, but he felt like their creative processes would actually work really well together. They met in an office on Sunset Boulevard long after they had met the Colonel. Elvis did see the special as a chance to reassert who he really was and to try to do something important.
Elvis plays If I Can Dream without the knowledge of the producers or Parker. False. If I Can Dream wasn't sprung on the Colonel. He could tell he was outnumbered about singing it and didn't want to lose the tactical high ground, so he made sure he had 100% of the publishing rights to the song. The song was cut in 5 takes on the last day of recording. By the time Elvis was in costume and on set, he had long since recorded the song, and the Colonel wasn't blindsided by it, though he was very insistent on him singing Christmas songs.
Elvis thought about firing the Colonel before the Las Vegas residency was booked. False. Elvis was focused on just recording good material and doing good shows. There's no indication that he was thinking about firing the Colonel. The film implies that he was booked at the International strongly to settle the Colonel's gambling debts at the International, and while he was worth about $1 million a year to them, there's just not much evidence to support the idea that it was actually a factor in the residency.
Elvis deep-throated a microphone in Vegas. True. He let the intrusive thoughts win. Hell yeah.
Lord have mercy.
Priscilla left Elvis over his pill addiction and distance as a husband and father. False. A lot of it was actually sexual dissatisfaction. Elvis was not intimate with Priscilla, even saying that he couldn't make love to a woman with a child. He may have actually assaulted her, but she later walked it back and said that it wasn't actually sexual assault and that those terms were too strong. She started having an affair with her karate instructor, Mike Stone. Elvis actually struggled with this relationship and actually thought about procuring the murder of Stone.
Elvis figured out that the Colonel was a fake identity and fired him on stage. False. This is the only part of the film that verges into outright falsehoods. Nobody really knew Parker's falsified background until 1981, 4 years after Elvis died. Elvis did have a bit of a meltdown one night on stage when Parker fired a kitchen staffer that he liked, but the scene where Elvis fires Parker and says, "Fuck the International" on stage is a complete fabrication. The two had become sort of estranged in the last years of Elvis's life, though. They rarely spoke. One of the last things Elvis said to Priscilla was, "Good old Colonel," because older Elvis records were moving again. Priscilla is a great film. Probably even better than Elvis, but they're very different productions. Like many Sofia Coppola films, Priscilla is about a very lonely, isolated person. An extremely compelling Kaylee Spaney as the title character. Completely unique in the Elvis-adjacent movie canon, the film doesn't care about Elvis Presley outside of how alluring his stardom and sex appeal could be for a young person. We meet him in a dimly lit room, and basically never see him perform. In fact, the whole movie is intensely backlit, which gives it a sort of dark, out-of-the-spotlight vibe. The few instances of Elvis's work are relegated to a shot or two of the '68 special on a TV, and his Vegas show reduced to an abstraction. Elvis in silhouette in front of a spotlight. At first, we felt like something might feel kind of amiss without any Elvis music, like an unlicensed biopic on Lifetime Channel or something. But not only is the soundtrack great with tons of deep-cut anachronistic love songs, it keeps the focus off the glitz. We never forget whose story this is.
In the movie, we see Priscilla grow from an adoring young fan into a confident woman who has been through far more emotional anguish than she should have been put through. Much of the movie quotes directly from Priscilla's memoir, Elvis and Me. Now, Lisa Marie Presley spoke out against the film before she died, calling it vengeful and contemptuous, with no trace of her father in it. But if anything, it's even a little toned down from Priscilla's book. There are what we would now call red flags all over Elvis's behavior in its pages, and Coppola could have put in far more of them into the script. But the movie is not a hit piece. It puts us in Priscilla's perspective, and lets an understanding of Elvis grow and change with hers. Let's fact check.
Priscilla met Elvis in Germany in 1959 at a house party. True. Priscilla was invited to a party by an officer where she was immediately smitten with Elvis, and Elvis seemed pretty immediately smitten with her too. Most of these scenes are straight out of Priscilla's book, including Elvis asking what the kids are listening to these days, and her answer, "You." He did ask if she was a junior or senior in high school, and he did respond with, "You're just a baby," when she said she was only in the 9th grade. Even the song playing on the record player when they meet is what Priscilla remembers, Brenda Lee's Sweet Nothings. What the film leaves out is that Kurt, one of her frequent rides to Elvis's place, tried to attack her on their way home one night. Man, she was just getting it from all sides.
Priscilla moved into Graceland immediately upon moving to Memphis. False. Priscilla's original deal between her and her father was that she would live with Vernon and his new wife, Dee, down the street from Elvis. She actually just sort of moved her stuff over to Graceland so gradually, no one really noticed.
Priscilla took some of Elvis's pills to get through school. True, Priscilla's last years in high school followed an incredibly grueling schedule. She would go to school during the day, Elvis would wake up in the middle of the afternoon, and then she'd be out all night going to movie theaters that Elvis had rented out, or to amusement parks or skating rinks. She would sometimes fall asleep for an hour or two, get up to go to school, and then go right back to bed when she got home from class, Elvis having been asleep the whole time. I can see why she would resort to the pills.
Priscilla cheated to graduate high school. True. Exactly as it shows in the film, Priscilla was on shaky ground about graduating high school. She knew that if she didn't graduate on time, her father would pull her back to Germany and her time with Elvis would be over. She knew she wasn't going to pass her math final, so she asked the girl next to her if she was an Elvis fan. When she replied in the affirmative, Priscilla asked if she'd like to go to one of her parties. The classmate slid her test over to Priscilla's side of the desk, and she copied every answer. Not only did she pass the test, she got an A. It pays to pick the right person to cheat off of, I guess.
Elvis was controlling about the clothes and styles Priscilla wore. True, the film shows this very accurately. The first time Elvis took Priscilla shopping, he told her that blue was her color and bought her a blue dress. When she expressed that she liked a heavily patterned dress, he flatly denied her, saying that it took emphasis off her face. He had her dye her hair black like his was, and wear heavy eye makeup. In her book, there's a picture of her captioned, "The way Elvis liked me."
Elvis got upset when Priscilla disagreed with him about music. Sort of true. In the film, Elvis asks Priscilla what she thinks of a song he's being pitched for an upcoming movie, and when she says she doesn't really like it, he throws a chair at her. A similar exchange happened, but it was much earlier. Elvis asked Priscilla if she liked his new songs, and she responded with saying that he could play some more rock and roll tunes, more along the lines of Jailhouse Rock. Elvis got upset, as he just wanted to know if she liked the songs, not get opinions about the style of music he should sing, and he slammed a door.
Elvis attempted to assault Priscilla in his suite in Las Vegas toward the end of their marriage. Sort of true. The movie pretty much aligns with what Priscilla has said over the years, and only truly Priscilla knows. It feels really gross to be speculating about this type of thing, so we're not going any further with this one.
Priscilla woke Elvis up in Vegas to tell him she was leaving. True. Just like in the movie, he asked, "What do you mean, leaving?" And she said, "Leaving our marriage." The 2022 movie repositioned this event to Graceland, which is where Priscilla went to, straight from Vegas, where she collected Lisa Marie and she moved out.
100% of Elvis's adult comedy series, Agent Elvis, is completely accurate and should be considered fact. Everything from the existence of Elvis's drinking, smoking chimp friend to Charles Manson trying to kill him, you should accept uncritically as gospel truth and do no more research on it.
Dozens of movies have been made about Elvis Presley in the last nearly 50 years, and he seems to be having a bit of a cultural moment, especially on the screen. A huge Hollywood movie, an award season contender from a popular indie studio, and a Netflix animated series, all within about 18 months of each other. Priscilla's is the most disarming of them all.
The way Elvis has been relentlessly marketed to people since the mid-50s makes it difficult to separate his immortal superhero from the breathing human being that absolutely was. If Baz's film, Priscilla's memoir, and Scotty Moore's biography are viewed together, they tell a remarkably similar story, but it's incredible how different they can be depending on who and what they choose to focus on.
Especially enlightening for us was how we've come to understand Priscilla Boyle Presley as a person. One thing that we've always grappled with is, yes, Elvis was essentially grooming her from a young age and then was alternately controlling and absent until their divorce. But Priscilla seems kind of okay. She doesn't seem to be some broken person or a victim. Our main takeaway is that she's an incredibly strong person. Despite how awful her 1960s and early 70s could be, she grew into a well-adjusted, intelligent person who developed her own business acumen. She's credited as an executive producer on Priscilla, and this could just be an honorary credit, like Stan Lee receiving an EP credit for the Marvel movies, but I wouldn't be surprised if she had involvement with the film on some level. I'm reminded of Colonel Tom Parker selling both I Like Elvis and I Hate Elvis pins.
There are multiple Elvises. The icon and the human being. Baz Luhrmann's film is so focused on how the icon consumes the human being that the movie itself buries the human being under a mountain of dazzling iconography. Priscilla doesn't care about the icon at all and shows us how the image is propped up on the suffering of others. Elvis the human being was a shy kid who got to live the American dream. Despite that dream coming true in a sense, he was also deeply afraid of the poverty his family had come from and was hopelessly unfulfilled by the thing that allowed him to get out of it. He had so little control over the factors of his life that he became, at times, viciously domineering, spiritually lost, and dependent on outward validation. Elvis the icon is a 30-foot-tall, gun-toting, pill-addled, impossibly cool neon sign with a voice like no other. Both Elvises have become the real Elvis.